It's pretty powerful little front row here. I feel like,
My hecklers.
right? This is going to be a tough audience. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right. Now, I'm planting a seed with everyone that we're going to open it up to questions before we get to the end. So think of questions if you have them, especially you front row group, you know. So just planting that seed. And oh my goodness, and David Kleinberg's walking the door. You know, it's a who's who here. I mean, it's just, honestly, you can't turn around without some world-renowned interior designer walking in the door. Mr. Kleinberg, we're so glad you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
She has so many fans, so many admirers.
I'm fortunate.
All right, we'll jump in, and I will just quickly get through some housekeeping really quick.
Okay.
And, fantastic. Okay, well, so thank you all for coming out on this cold night. Poor Suzanne flies in from San Francisco. She hasn't fully acclimated to the New York temperatures. We're so sorry, but didn't pack enough warm clothes. So if you see her shivering up here on stage, it's just because she's adjusting to the temperature. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dennis Scully. I am the host of the Business of Home podcast, and I'm also the curator of the Dialogues on Design series here at the New York School of Interior Design. For those of you that don't know, this is actually one of our big fundraising events through subscriptions and sponsorships and through ticket sales. Tonight, actually, we raise money for our various scholarship programs, including our diversity scholarship and our pre-college scholarship program, where we introduce interior design as a career path for young people from often underrepresented communities. This group here is a group of our generous supporters, and I wonder if you would join me in thanking them with just a quick round of applause to all the people who very kindly have donated. We greatly appreciate their generosity. Tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with renowned interior designer Suzanne Tucker. Suzanne's San Francisco-based firm Tucker & Marks has grown to become one of the most prestigious interior design firms in the country. I don't mean to embarrass you.
No, but you really don't need to read all this.
Well, I just want the crowd to know how illustrious a guest we have with us tonight. Her work has repeatedly landed her on the Elle Decor A list and the AD 100 list, and what I can only assume is perhaps her most favorite accolade to date. She was awarded the Albert Hadley Award here at the New York School of Interior Design last year at our gala. So, congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
I want to mention that Suzanne's third book, Extraordinary Interiors, which was published by Monticelli Press last year, Suzanne will be doing a book signing tomorrow evening. Sadly, Nina Campbell won't be there, but hopefully many of you will get there at the McKinnon and Harris showroom in the D&D building from 5 to 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. So if you don't get enough of Suzanne tonight and you're eager to get your hands on that book, come by the D&D building tomorrow between 5 and 7, and we'll be there. Looking forward to that. So what was so nice of you, and will you please join me before we begin in just welcoming Suzanne this evening? Yes. And we so appreciate everyone coming out, and we're thrilled to have you here. You were so kind to send an MRI scan.
Yes, I sent an MRI scan
of yours,
yes.
Which was we didn't ask for that, but that's so sweet that you thought to.
Yeah, I figured, how crazy is she, right?
Does this tell us everything we need to know right here?
Well, this is actually Brain 2.0.
Okay.
Because I did Brain 1.0 about 18 years ago when I was speaking to a group of architects and colleagues when I was in Venice at a leadership conference. And it was the only time I was ever nervous about speaking in front of a group because it was, high-powered architects and my colleagues whom I totally revere. And I thought, well, what am I going to tell them anything that's different that they don't already know? And then I thought, well, I'm just going to show them how my brain works. So this is 2.0 that we updated, and this is basically how an interior designer's brain works, because those of you who are in the biz know that oftentimes you work with people way outside of this industry. They don't understand our industry whatsoever. They just think it doesn't make any sense, and how do you do this, and it's not a good business plan, and all these things. And so I said, well, this is how my brain works, and this is what it's all filled with. Obviously, there's a lot of architecture, inspiration, all those things. There's very little internal time clock, just so you know.
I couldn't help but notice that.
That's right. And no, it'll be on my tombstone. I'm sorry I'm late.
Okay.
But, and then, diet is basically non-existent. Same with exercise calendar, those boring things in email. But, but this is basically when you have been in the business long enough, for those students in the room, this is what fills your brain.
Yeah.
This is what I think about all day long. I dream about it at night. I wake up and I think about it at night and worry about it at night. And then this is kind of how a designer's brain works. So that's why I thought I'd show you my latest MRI.
Okay. Well, I so appreciate you sharing such a personal thing with us, Suzanne. It's very generous. So speaking of interior designers and students, I'd love to see a show of hands of who in the audience is a student and/or interior designer in the audience. Okay. Hi.
Okay, lots of students.
Okay. You're in high school. You're a senior in high school. Okay, fantastic.
Good.
But you're
To ask her a question. So my high school does internships.
okay. All right.
My high school does internships, and like every single 3 times a week we go to an internship, and you can, if you need like students, you can ask my high school, and like you don't have to pay them. Like it's like we get credits for internships that we do. Like we could just be like babysitting kids, and we get like 3 credits from that. So if you want to like have people help you, I feel like I would probably love an internship like that. So
Okay, you're on.
All right.
But I'll pay you.
Yeah.
Don't undersell yourself.
We'll work out the terms.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, we'll make it work for you. But okay, well, good. I'm glad to see.
Which actually, for all the
mix.
students in the room, if you would like a copy of my book, I would be happy to send you a copy of my book, because I'm a big proponent on building your libraries. It's one of the most important things you can do starting out, is start to build your library. So I don't want you to buy one. Just give me your name. I will send a group of books here to the school, and you can pick them up.
Well, that is very generous. Wow. Well, that's lovely. Mother, would you stick? Yeah, we'll stick our name in there a few times, will you? Yeah. Well, that's very generous of you. And actually, it's one of the things that several, and you and I have talked about this in the past, encouraging design students to come to book signings, to come to events where designers are speaking. I understand that you at one time had a boss that wouldn't let you come to hear a very prestigious designer
We should probably
speak.
flip
Well,
through the
I know.
slides
Well, I'm
at
going to
the
get to
same
your
time.
former.
There we go.
I'm going to get to your former boss right here.
There's my former boss, Michael
Yeah.
Taylor, for those of you who know. God, my waist was small. But
Yeah, I love how you inserted this very flattering picture of yourself.
really.
Yeah.
after my brain MRI.
Exactly.
But no, I moved to England, and I worked there for one of John Fowler's last assistants, and whose name was Peter Hood. He's no longer with us. And that was a great crash course in, wonderful British country house design and all those yummy, icky colors that, work so well over there. And then when I came back to the States, everyone said, oh, you should go work for Michael Taylor, because I was moving to San Francisco. All my friends were there. And everything I'd seen of Michael Taylor was all these sort of, rocks and trees and white. And of course, I'd come from England. And but I ended up getting a job with him.
I don't know what you meant by that, Nina.
But I ended up getting a job with him. But I got my foot in the door by basically not answering a question completely accurately. Because when I went to interview for this position, I was told after 20 minutes that the position was filled, but Michael needed a good secretary, and would I be interested in being his secretary? And don't ask me what made me bite my tongue, but I was like, okay, my foot in the door. So I said, well, what's involved? And the fellow interviewing me said, well, you need to plan Michael's travel. Fine, I can do that. You need to deal with his clients. Fine, I can do that. You need to make sure he gets places on time. You can do that. And then he gets on the phone, talks to Michael. Okay, I think we've got a good one here. And then he says, and I assume your typing skills are good. And I looked at him dead in the eye and I said, I am extremely accurate. I had been tested at 26 words a minute. So how can you not be accurate when you type like this? But that's how I went to work for Michael. And then within 2 months, he started taking me on projects with him and realized, yes, I actually did have a degree in design. I actually did know something a little bit. And he was truly my mentor. But there was a moment in San Francisco time when Sister Parrish was coming to speak. And she rarely did speaking engagements, as those of you know who worked for her, and really didn't like doing them. But someone, well, one of her clients, I know who it was, convinced her to come out and speak. And so I went to Michael and I said, I'd like to have, whatever it was, Wednesday, October 17th off in the afternoon. He was like, why? I said, well, Sister Parrish is coming to town and I want to hear her speak. No. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean no? And he said, no. Why do you want to go hear her? And I said, because she's Sister Parrish and I want to hear what she has to say in decorating and design. And he said, no, you can't go. And so I looked at him and I said, well, then I'm calling in sick. And that was it. And yes, I went.
Yes. Exactly, and
yes.
one of the rare appearances to see Sister Parrish
exactly.
speaking in public, and you quickly discovered why you see her too often in public. But I want to use that story to give a little bit of insight, and you like to joke, but you were working for a pretty challenging boss.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, look at the chair he's sitting in.
Yes. Exactly. That might tell you a little bit.
And look at the jacket he's wearing. I mean, he had more Versace and Armani jackets, and these are the 80s, you guys. So this is, shoulders out to here like a gorilla. And he would come into the office, and everyone would be in a panic that Michael's coming. And then he'd sort of stop in front of you with this giant leather jacket, and then this cologne would go bam in your face. And you'd be like, good morning. And then he'd bark orders, And for whatever reason, I just pushed back on him, and because he was such a bully. And my very first week, I remember I had a date that night, and my date said, well, how's your new job going? I said, well, I'm probably going to get fired. And he goes, why do you say that? I said, everybody gets fired. No one had been there in the entire office for longer than 6 months, except one person. And so I was like, I'm probably going to get fired. And so Michael left for New York, and he called me on Wednesday. He was flying back on Friday. And he said, have you booked my car for Friday pickup? I said, no, not yet. And he hung up on me. And so I called him right back, and I said, that is so rude. I said, how dare you hang up on me? I'm not going to hang up on you. I think that's the rudest thing you can possibly do to someone. And I said, what do you think I'm going to do, leave you stranded in New York? Of course I'm going to book your car for you. It's only Wednesday morning, for heaven's sakes. You're leaving on Friday. I mean, I had
You
this whole
tell
thing.
him, Suzanne.
So I was 25 years old. I had no idea why I was being so, but anyway. So there was dead silence on the phone. I was like, okay, I'm getting fired. And all he said was, I'm sorry. I said, fine, I accept your apology. Your car will be booked, picking you up. Dun-dun-dun. And that was sort of the beginning of our relationship. And I was his pet. I was totally his pet. He treated me like no one else in the office, took me on all the projects, took me to all the houses and clients. And he was such a bully. I mean, I just had to say to him, stop being so mean to people.
And what would he say in response to that?
Oh my God, he would say things to people that he would get absolutely lawsuits now.
Yeah.
But, you could get away with it then.
Right.
Can't do that now.
Well, but and did that serve you well as a lesson to stand up to the bully and to push back, or do you think that was the exception in this particular case with a gentleman that came to like you a great deal?
I think there was an era where the decorator was God, and the decorator would come in and tell you to get rid of everything, and you had to start over, and that era is long gone.
Is that true that it's not that way anymore?
Exactly, and and people would just tremble,
Yeah.
But that taught me a lot. First off, how not to treat your employees. Secondly, how not to run a business. I mean, there was a point towards the end where we were getting paid in cash. something's wrong. Yeah, it taught me a lot. I adored Michael.
Yeah.
But he was not easy. So, but then I found out I had his mother's same birthday. So I thought, there's some kind of weird Freudian thing going on. So, you know. But no, I miss him to this day. And I will tell you, and I was with him when he died, and I will tell you that there are still many times that I will stand in a room and I'll look and I'll think, wonder what Michael would do. You know, there's still a little bit of that. So he had an amazing sense of scale, placement, and people think of him as white, you know, doing white rooms, but he had a fabulous sense of color, and he loved color. So that was the side of Michael that I really tapped into, was his use of incredibly beautiful antiques and collections, and yet mixing it with contemporary furniture and upholstery and art, modern art. I mean, that was his true genius. And that wasn't really always what got published. But that was really wonderful to have that whole insight into really his genius factor.
No, you're right. So often, I mean, they like to put him in a box and
Yeah.
say he was that very California white look, right? And so often those were the projects that got published. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it sold magazines. It made the phone ring,
Yeah.
you know. And, you know, that was his bread and butter of his business, that very signature look. Which is also, I think, why I never, ever wanted to develop a signature look. It just didn't interest me. I like the personal connection with my clients, with the project. I'm not going to live there. I mean, if I'm lucky, I get invited back for a drink.
Sure.
But, you know, it's their home. I want it to be them and reflect them. So the loveliest compliment someone can say to me is, oh, I saw so-and-so's house that you did. It is so them. They're absolutely so happy. That makes me up to the moon. I love that.
Right.
That's the best.
Because you really tapped into them
You tapped
and who
into
they
it.
are. Yeah. So he taught you a lot about what not to do, but really he also formed a lot of how you see things and saw projects along the way. So tell us what
So this is, you know, quintessential
Yeah.
Michael Taylor. I think this was in House and Garden back in the day. This was a house up in Lake Tahoe. And, you know, this, for the students in the room, you should have the Michael Taylor book in your library, by the way. But
we can't give you that one, but find it and yeah.
yeah, I have extra copies if you want. But anyway, this is so typical is why I put it in here. Because it was the rocks, it was, you know, the trees, it was big, oversized, overscaled things. You know, the gigantic pillows, the ball pillows. Michael thought he invented the ball, you know, next in fire. But, and then some of these are some of his own unique designs. And then this is the house I just mentioned that he took me to his client's house. This was the first house Michael took me to. And, you know, grab your notebook, tape measure, get in the car. And we pull up to this wonderful Willis Polk house and in San Francisco, and I walked in, and mind you, I grew up in Santa Barbara, so I've seen many beautiful houses, and living in London, I'd seen many beautiful, you know, National Trust houses and this, but this house, when I walked in, absolutely transported me. Architecturally, it is perfection. And Michael had been working on this for a long time. This was John and Dodie Rosecrantz's house. And this room on the left, this is the dining room. This room was done in the late 70s. It is still timeless. It is still absolutely today. And then this is the living room. And, you know, very simple in terms of it's just a Michael Taylor white, which you like to paint everything as Michael Taylor special formula. But, you know, rather nice to have 3 Picassos in your living room.
Yes.
But, you know, he didn't screw with the architecture here. It was already good. And this was the house where you really saw kind of Michael's real genius of that mix of things together. And that's what resonated with me. Not the big ball pillows and the, you know, oversized, all of that. That actually isn't very timeless. That sort of set itself in a time.
Right.
But this to me is still timeless. This is the room I still want to sit in, you know, and live in.
No, I very much agree.
And then along comes Architectural Digest, and this was, oh gosh, what year was this? I think it was 1991. And this was after Michael died, and Paige Rents, who I will give full credit for, putting me on the map. She published My Own House. And
Who used to be the editor-in-chief of Architectural Digest, for the young people in the room who might not understand that reference. Yes.
Yeah. And
yes, yes.
Paige Rents was, she ran Architectural Digest, AD to the current world, with, an iron glove. I mean, she was really fierce. And, but she respected loyalty. And if she felt that she put you on the map, she expected that loyalty. And I was loyal to her. Would always send her everything first, and she was wonderful and published my first.
Well, and exactly, and we should actually explain again for students and people who might not know, during that era, the loyalty that Suzanne is referencing. If you were published by Paige Rents, she expected you to be published nowhere else.
Yes.
And if you were published somewhere else, and several well-known interior designers decided that they would just try their hand at getting published somewhere else, and they were never again published in Architectural Digest.
Yeah, you were blackballed.
So it was a very, it was a very different time. But if she loved you and you were loyal to her, then she could make your career.
Yeah. No, she was very much on those lines. If you'd been published somewhere else before, then, then she didn't hold you to it, so to speak. But I do remember there was one project that was rejected, and then I said, so does this mean I can now take this to, whatever it was, House and Garden, El Decoro at the time, and then it was, well, now, Suzanne. All right, well, I tried, but yes, those days are gone too. But this was the first one in Architectural Digest, and then there's been numerous since.
Yeah, and tell everyone. So sadly, Michael passes away, and then you go off on your own.
Yeah, it was one of those things where there were sort of clients left hanging, and Tim, who's now my husband, he called up and he said, there's all these projects, and we need to kind of finish these and carry things on. And I had actually had my daughter at the time, she was 6 months old, and I said, my days of working 9 to 5, right now, it's just not going to happen. So I said, well, let's form a company. He goes, I'll do the business. He said, you do the decorating and designing, and I'll do the business side of it. I'm like, okay. Well, I didn't realize when you have your own company, it isn't 9 to 5 anyway.
Right.
It's 24/7 plus. So, but yeah, that was, oh my gosh, that was in 1986.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself.
No, we don't have to say. I
Good.
just wanted to give people a little context so that they knew what sort of pushed you out the door, got you on your own.
It did.
Yeah.
And at first we actually labeled ourselves Michael Taylor Associates.
Yes.
But then, it's interesting in design, it's not like good old Morgan Bank. JP Morgan's long gone, but the name carries on and it stands for something. It doesn't work that way in design. I mean, I know with, Parrish Hadley, that's a perfect example where, it just wasn't going to carry on. Macmillan is the rare firm that's actually been able to carry on. So that was when we realized, everyone knows what Michael Taylor did. And they want to know, in a creative world, they want to know what you do. And so then, Tucker and Marks was formed.
Well, so and I don't want to jump ahead, but since you raised this, tell me how you think about that. Do you think about positioning key people in your office to rise up and become the next generation?
I do. It's,
okay.
I think anyone who has run a business sort of as long as I have in this industry, I will be honest, there's a rare talent that walks through the door. True talent, a true eye, true talent. But there's many wonderful creative people who walk through the door. And you need those as much as you may need the, 1 or 2 or 3 people with really genuine talent. Not everyone's meant to be, the chief. You need the Indians, right?
Yeah.
And is that PC not to say that?
I'm afraid actually you're not allowed to say that anymore, but
God,
we're going to let it slide tonight.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. But it really is one of those things where, having 35 employees now, it's great when it's not, but until it's not. You know, it's
Right.
kind of like having roommates when you're in college or something. And when you've got great roommates, it's wonderful. But when you've got one that's just horrible, oh my God, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. But so, you know, when you have an employee that just isn't working, it's better that they go someplace else. They're meant to be someplace else, you know. But again, sort of the things you learn along the way, right?
Well, no, exactly. And you and I have talked in the past, and I want to share that with students especially, but this choice that one makes sometimes about, do I go to work for Suzanne Tucker and her firm and stay there for 20 years in the hopes of rising up and having a key position there, versus going out on my own
Yeah.
and having to take on all of the responsibilities of running a business in addition to doing the design work. Your earlier MRI scan didn't show a lot of time for a lot of things.
No. But I do think, you know, first off, it's not really taught. I don't know if it's taught here at nysid or not. Is there a business course, like how to run an office, how to, you know, in interior design? I don't know that there is. I think just like there's probably not, you know, a course in medical school of how to have a nice bedside manner. But,
Sadly, yeah, that
sadly,
doesn't seem to be
they need one.
stressed. Yeah.
But it really is one of those things where I do think it's really important to go with a firm or just one other designer, somebody. I think having that mentorship is so hugely important. And I will say the majority of people, well, in this room, my age, my colleagues, they had mentors. You know, nowadays it seems a very easy thing to just, hang out a shingle because my roommate said I had nice taste and I did her apartment, and so now I can hang out my shingle. And guess what? When the recession comes, which it will again because it does, things go in cycles, you won't be able to sustain that. And also, you make huge mistakes. And mistakes are the expense.
Yeah.
And they're more expensive than ever, I think, these days. But to have a mentor, to have someone who you learn the ropes from, you learn the good, the bad, the ugly. And the other aspect is, you know, anyone in my office who makes a mistake, guess whose mistake it is? It's mine. My name's on the door. It doesn't matter who makes it in my office, but to a client, my mistake.
Yeah.
It gets fixed. And unlike Michael Taylor, he would have been fired after some brutal, you know. But I think having a mentor, I think actually having a degree in design is very important. And I also think going out and finding what suits you, what fits. I feel incredibly fortunate because when I was at university, it was actually a Bachelor of Arts degree that was in design. And so I remember my sophomore year, I had a year-long course in history of world furniture. An entire year sitting in the dark, writing notes, and
Yeah.
you know, and I still have those notes, and I still have that textbook on world furniture, and it was a fantastic education, which, you know, needs to be taught, and also not everyone is meant to become the designer. You know, I've had
Exactly my point.
Yeah, I've hired people. I had one really lovely young woman. She had her MBA. And she was applying for the intern position. And I looked at her resume and I said, "You have an MBA. Why are you applying for an intern?" She said, "Because I don't want to be in the finance world. I want to be in design." And I said, "Well, do you think you want to be a designer?" And she said, "No, I think I just want to be in a creative business." She turned out to be an incredibly good project manager. And she loved being around designers and around creative people. And I think that's where you sort of start to find your niche. Like what resonates with you? You know, for me, it was the design aspect, and it was working on the plans and taking them home and sitting up until midnight looking at them and studying them and, you know, designing fabrics and all sorts of things. Certainly not running the business, but
Right.
important.
No. And you were so lucky that you had a partner who could run
very.
the business side of it.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's important to recognize one's skill sets and preferences.
Yeah, and I know that's one thing that Bunny talks about, where she says that, you know, first thing she did when she left Parrish Hadley was hire a bookkeeper.
Hire that bookkeeper.
And I think that is a huge mistake that a lot of creatives make in all sorts of creative fields, is they don't realize what they don't know. So, you know, I always say hire to your weaknesses. And, that will make you strong, and it'll make them good at their job. So that's a win-win. Hire to your weaknesses.
Hire to your weaknesses. Make note of that. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. Back here to this fabulous view.
Oh, okay. This is a project. I'm going to actually show three houses. They're all the same client. Okay.
Nice.
And
okay.
And very different projects. So this is the before on the left. If you thought for a moment that I did this.
We were going to question that, but thank you for clearing it up.
Yeah, this was actually a showcase house back, I think it was 25 years ago. And, a myriad of colors, and, someone, threw up colors in the whole house. But clients bought it and hired me to do it. And we ended up gutting the entire house 5 floors down. This is in San Francisco, Pacific Heights. And rebuilding and putting it all back together. And this is that same room now, opened up, and I did a whole sort of faux bois all over the walls. And as you can see, this faces out to the San Francisco Bay, and it's quite spectacular. But they wanted this to be a house that would be fun and entertaining, and yet they had 3 college boys, and then this is looking back the other direction from that morning room. And you can see here, looking through, we created this wonderful enfilade of rooms going all the way through to the living room.
Yeah, it's so fabulous.
Which is now we're standing in the living room over here, and we're looking back through the entry hall, through that fabulous Scottish table. It's a decagon.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really, really fabulous. And then you look all the way through to the morning room. So this completely was gutted. You could at one point stand on the top floor and you could see all the way down, 5 floors down. And then the dining room on the left, again, remnants of a showcase in the late 80s, I think it was. And this is the new dining room. So what we did was, and every inch is new in terms of floor, ceiling, walls. I said to them, if you could have any sort of feeling in your dining room, what would it be? And they said, well, we don't want it to be imposing. We don't want it to be a room where we can't just sit as a family and have dinner. We don't want it to feel like it's just a formal space. And I said, well, the way to do that is, of course, to create warmth within that space. And I said, we could get a wonderful boiserie room and install it. And they said, well, how do you do that? And I said, well, I make a few calls to Paris and ended up finding the most fabulous 18th century French boiserie room. Now, this room, as you see, this is all the paneling, and it was dark, like, men's club stained dark brown. And so I told the guy in Paris, I said, it's perfect, we'll take it. It fit with the exception of, I think, 2 overdoors. And I said, but now I want you to bleach it 3 times. Oh, no, Suzanne, you cannot do this. I said, yes, you're going to do this. And he said, no, it'll ruin it. I said, it will not ruin it. It's oak, right? And he said, yes. And I said, trust me on this one. This is, channeling Michael Taylor, okay, who bleached the heck out of everything. So I get a phone call about a month later, and he said, this is the most beautiful paneling I've ever seen. He said, it's perfect. And I said, make sure it's like a lovely honey color. And then when they shipped it over, he shipped over the crew, and they installed every single inch of it, and it fit together like a glove. So that was a fun thing to do. And they use it all the time. And those fabulous urns in the back, those came from Carly Hobbs, who used to be right around the corner. And then, we call them the spaghetti chairs. Michael always called them spaghetti chairs. And, those are classics. And we collected all the antiques for this house and all the antique rugs. And there's a different chandelier now. Just put in a fabulous rock crystal one. And then this is their family room. And again, every inch you see here is new, but with the idea that this was a house that was originally built in the 1880s. And then it went through several machinations of going French, going English, and they wanted to take it back to a more of a French feel, but not fussy French. But we took it down completely to the studs, reconfigured all the rooms. And so with the goal that we wanted it to look like it had just been a really well-kept house for a century plus. So, and again, always nice to have a Wayne Thiebaud to work around. Yeah, this is where they live. You know, we all live in our family rooms and kitchens, basically.
Well,
And this is their very modern New York
Yeah.
apartment.
yeah.
So when we started working on the San Francisco house, which was a 5-year project, and I know that's hard for students sometimes because 5 years in your lifetime is like a fifth of your lifetime. So
Yeah, but tell them that. But tell them that these projects might go on for 5 years and buckle in
well,
with that
yes,
client.
and I understand why it feels like a long time. But I always say, think about the great houses in this country, but think about the great houses in Europe. Some of those took 100 years. I mean, granted, technology has helped us quite a bit, but really good houses take time. They take thought. They don't just happen overnight. And you've got to be in it for the long haul. You've got to, keep your vision, hold fast. You know, they all say, well, what it's going to look like. Beautiful is the answer. We don't do ugly. But these clients, midway through the San Francisco house, very traditional house, and they said, well, it'd be really fun to have a New York apartment. I said, that would be great, why not? And they said, yeah, we could do it sort of more kind of like modern, a little more. I said, sure, let's do it. And then she chimed in and said, yeah, but you need a surf shack as well, and a place to go surfing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, guess what? They call up and they say, well, we bought this apartment in the Flatiron. And I'm like, great. So now we're doing the house in the city and we're doing the apartment in New York. And as you see, it was very, very clean lined, very different. They're big art collectors. And we would work together on the art and on the placement of art in which house, which was really wonderful and fun. That Frankenthaler, just to give you a sense of scale, it's about 10 feet wide.
Wow.
The sofa is 12 feet. And big, beautiful, fabulous spaces and wonderful light. It overlooks Washington Square Park. And being able to sort of, bring them 18th century French pieces, at the same time I'm bringing them, contemporary pieces from Geckler or from, Studio Drift, the dandelion chandelier. And, to be able to kind of go back and forth with this look was really fun at the time.
And were they totally open to that? Were they?
Oh,
willing
totally.
to-
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, how do you keep them engaged and energized during this multi-year project where things, I'm sure, at various points start to drag, or they're wondering when it's all going to be finished?
You can never, ever take for granted the amount of money that clients are spending. You never take it for granted. And I know in my office, I'll have a young assistant who'll say, oh my God, this is so much money. Why would they buy this? And I said, that's not really something you need to be concerned about.
Don't you trouble yourself about
Exactly.
that. Thank
Pretty
you.
little head.
That's true.
No,
That's what we have the paddle for. Yeah.
exactly. I don't think you're supposed to say that anymore. No, it's usually public flogging at noon.
Yeah.
But no, it's sort of staggering to think a piece of furniture that costs whatever, $200,000, and it's one piece of furniture, and it sounds like very heady stuff, but it's also people who are in collecting mode.
Yeah.
So true collectors, and a true collector. I mean, someone said, so-and-so is a big collector, and I was like, well, are they still collecting? A true collector is someone who collects up until
always
they're
collecting.
about to die.
Yeah.
Because and it's not about having room for it or even being able to afford it. It's just, you collect because you love to collect and you have a passion for it. So these people have passion.
Yeah.
So, how do you keep the momentum going? Well, when you're doing 3 houses at once, you got to switch gears quickly.
Yeah.
If I see they're kind of getting burnt out talking about the city house, let's talk about the beach, or let's go to New York. Let's talk about New York. And so it's a juggling act. But I don't know. You do it. I'm a really good listener.
No, but it's a very real challenge. And I mean,
Very.
and to your point, they're writing big checks. which can sometimes create stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
And and it's taking a long time, and regardless of how much money they have, or
No, it
things.
isn't about that. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be sensitive to the fact that basically, on these huge, long projects, they're hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to be sensitive to that. And you have to read people. You learn to read people. You become the psychologist in all of this. And I think, again, you just never take it for granted. And it's also not always about expensive things. That was something I learned from Michael Taylor. You can put, a silly little plant in something from Cost Plus next to that fabulous 18th century chair, and they can sing together. That's that yin and yang, the tension that makes an interior more unique. A room that has all perfect 18th century things, you can go to museums to see those. That's not how you want to live. You want to be able to kick your shoes off, curl your feet up. I think no matter what room you're in, you should be able to do that, no matter how fancy it is.
Yeah.
This is the opposite end of that living room. So we had 2 different Studio Drift dandelion chandeliers opposing, and of course there's a Flatiron building, and they again, what they wanted, very sleek. They wanted totally different than San Francisco. And then the bedroom. In her study.
Nice.
And then this is their beach house.
Oh.
So this came at the same time. We're redoing the whole San Francisco house. So we're doing these 3 projects, and 3 totally different projects. So City House came first, Beach House came second, New York came third. Guess which order they were finished in? New York finished first, Beach finished second, and the City House finished last.
Really?
Yeah. It was quite something. But this was really fun because I got to sort of channel some of my Santa Barbara sort of upbringing and vernacular and things that I love about that kind of living. And she really wanted a more Mediterranean feel to the house. And so we did things like the Sotil tiles and wonderful hand-forged iron railings for the staircases and things, and white oak floors. And it's, as you see, it's right out to the ocean.
Yeah.
Apparently the best surfing spot in Santa Cruz. Note to self, when you go surfing. So. And again, they brought in great art.
It's pretty fantastic.
And we were able to take a house that had a sort of a rabbit warren of rooms and totally open it up. So created bigger spaces and kind of gave it a very traditional look on the street side of the house, but on the back side of the house, we gave it a much more modern look with big sliding doors, and it was, they use it all the time. I mean, their kids use it, they use it. It's probably trashed by now. But
Well, so you mentioned earlier about not wanting to have a signature style or a signature look. How do you articulate what your style has become over the years? How do you think about it?
That's a tough question for me to answer. And I guess I would describe it in adjectives. My houses are all, even the most modern, and I like to say it's modern my way, are still layered. I always approach textiles and materials, elements in a room. I always approach them with a balance. You don't want everything shiny. You don't want everything matte. You don't want everything textured. So, because that's all about light in a room as well, and how light catches on, the arm of a chair or on a table or on, a rug, something with a texture to it. I look at my work like that. It's adjectives. So it's layered. It's I hope always elegant but approachable. Elegant sort of has I think a weird connotation that it has to be dressy or something. No. But I don't have a cookie cutter, and I've never wanted that. Might have been more lucrative, but no. Again, for me, it's about tapping into the client and the person and who they are, how they want to live, and creating that home for them. So that's the key thing. But I'll always bring in my own elements of what I just mentioned.
Yeah.
That texture, those layers. Yeah, I can't seem to get away from that. Maybe that's okay.
Well, and as you say, I mean, it is tempting, and you can understand people that do have a signature look, and they're able to recreate that, and people come to them for that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
yeah.
I get it too. I got bored with it, quite
Yeah.
frankly, with Michael.
With Michael, yeah.
When it was that kind of project. And he would say, okay, well, this fabric and this, I'm like, Michael, you can't use that fabric again. I said, it's 3 blocks down from Mrs. So-and-so. You can't, you did that bedroom already. I mean, I was like, oh God, you know.
Yeah.
So I get bored easily. So I like to just do things differently and mix it up. And this was fun because I also got to do the architecture. And so being able to, really, bring in my love of architecture, which I actually considered becoming an architect.
I was just going to say, which almost was the career path.
Almost, yeah.
But
I found out that you needed to do a lot of math. And I had no interest in taking one more math class in my entire life. So I didn't bother going on to architecture school. But I actually think I've had the best of both worlds, not being an architect. I find when I'm working with architects, my mind is more open. I think architects, by training, tend to look at things more like this, obviously like this. And I'm much more sort of bigger picture. Well, what if we did this? Well, I don't know about it. Well, sure, let's consider it. It's harder for them to get out of, I think, that thinking of everything has to be, following a grid or whatever. And so I think I actually, as I said, the best of both worlds. I get to step my foot into architecture, and we have an architecture department in my office. And I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it. But I'm very much a classicist when it comes to architecture. So, these are perfect circles.
Right.
Just pointing out.
yeah, yeah. But some architects are more open to your involvement than others. I'm assuming.
Well, yes. I mean, they better be. I don't know. It's interesting. You find who you work really well with, and where you can sort of, it just becomes very symbiotic. And I've done a lot of projects with Andrew Skurman out in California. And Andy's funny. He started off as a modernist with I. M. Pei, and then he completely discovered classicism, and now he only wants to do classical houses. But he can absolutely go out, way out there into classical land, and I have to reel him back in and like, no, we're not going to do this. This is not, the library. When we always say, yes, it's not a civic building. But so I have to pull him back in. And then other architects, I find I have to kind of stretch a little bit. Like, well, if we did this, and if we, are there any architects in the room?
Yeah, is there anyone that, okay.
Oh, an architect in the room, okay.
Forgive us for all our sweeping generalities
yeah,
that we've just
exactly.
been making about architects.
I know. You're very nice, you just said us. I'm the one making generalities. But
I was trying to bail you out there.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm here for you.
But I love working with architects, and I'm always the architect's advocate. But I really feel that architecture is our meaning a designer's canvas from what we can do, and really good decorating can save really bad architecture, and really bad decorating can really ruin good architecture. So it's important to find, that niche. I mean, I work with Ferguson Shamamian, who I love, and they are so open. And I think the reason they're so open to working with a designer is because they came from a Parrish Hadley background. They understand how a house needs to work. And I think that's a lot that's not taught in architecture school, is how a house needs to actually function, flow. And I'm all about sort of sight lines and, where's your eye landing? What's it, is it a door that's halfway there, halfway not? And so that, I think, is a real gift for an architect to really understand how a house needs to function and flow. That's huge, because otherwise it just doesn't work.
No, absolutely. And I think we've spoken in many of these conversations about what can sometimes be a challenging interaction. And you mentioned Ferguson Schmamian is a perfect example of when it can be a wonderful symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
But sometimes architects, forgive me, don't always want to hear from the interior designer, or they have an idea of when they want to hear from them and when they don't, right? Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be called in on the very beginning of a project.
Right.
And that is oftentimes a mistake that happens when either a client doesn't realize that, or an architect doesn't realize that, or a builder, whatever. But I always say, if you're going to do this, call me in early, because otherwise I'm going to be the bad guy, because I'm going to be the voice who says, let's change this, let's move this, let's push this, and
Right.
that costs money.
Yeah.
So if you get your dream team together and you start it from the get-go, it's always good.
Yeah.
More minds, more great minds. It's
Right.
always good.
Bring them in the beginning, though, is the key.
Starting at the beginning, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. On that subject, just really quickly, again, with students in mind, working with a team, whether it's the architects, whether it's the landscape architects, whether it's the general contractors, et cetera, what have you found to be the key to your success in navigating all of those often complex
Yeah.
relationships, right?
Someone needs to be the hub. Someone needs to be the hub that either holds the vision and who can sort of keep everyone on the path where the end result is what the client is after. And invariably, I find that I am the hub, because I need to work with the contractor, I need to work with the architect, I need to work with the lighting designer, I need to work with the landscape architect, who I always bring into the house and have them stand at the window and say, this is what they see. So, okay. And views, same with views. You don't live in your view, you live with your view. So, and same with the garden. When you're in your home, you're living with that garden as part of your home. So I find I'm invariably that hub person who, I'll keep all those elements, kind of the juggling act, and communication. That's always the key to everything. Just communicate. If something's not going to work, just say, you know what, I've thought about this. It's not going to work. I need to change it. Boom. The more you own things like that too, the easier it is. And people get timid about doing that, but.
Well, that's the thing, and you can get a little intimidated about speaking up, right? But
Well, call Michael Taylor back and tell him not to hang up on you.
that was the lesson there. But not all of us have your courage. Sometimes.
Ask for the intern job sitting here.
Yes,
There you
exactly.
go. Not lacking confidence.
No, she's going to be showing up at your office.
I know.
She's actually just left to pack, I think.
Yeah.
She went home to pack her bags to San Francisco.
Oh, and this is a fun bathroom that we were able to do in that house, and this is that fabulous, blue marble from Brazil, and as you can see, they are showering out to the Pacific Ocean. But we also did one of those things that you see in offices where you can hit the button and the glass goes frosted, and then it goes.
Love it.
So yeah, the wife wasn't so comfortable with this.
But once you explained the technology, that
it's actually a gas that's in between the panes of glass, and so actually when it's clear, the glass is working. The gas is working, and then you hit the button, and all of a sudden it becomes like frosted. Okay.
Yeah.
And they do it in offices a lot, like when you want to then have a private conference room kind of thing. But and I'd seen it in an office before, and I thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity for this, because you didn't, you were set back far enough to your vanities that you could be totally starkers and no one would see you from the beach. But if you're actually showering in there, someone can look up from the beach and see you. So it was a kind of the perfect thing to be able to always have the view, except when you're showering. Although I don't think he ever uses it, but I know she uses it, so he doesn't care. Oh. And then everyone loves to see the decorator's own house. So this is Tim's and my house down in Santa Barbara. And I bought this house 27 years ago, but I'd actually started renting it 35 years ago.
Oh.
And it was one of those things where I was going through divorce, and I was spending the summer down in Santa Barbara with my family and my daughter. And I thought, well, I'm going to find a house to rent. So driving around with the realtor, and we drove up a little lane I'd never been up before in my life, and yet I grew up, nearby. And I suddenly said, stop. I said, what's behind those gates? And she said, well, I don't know. Let's take down the address. And, before Dr. Google. And she called me back a week later, and she said, do you remember that little street we were on? And you asked what was behind those gates? And I said, yeah. And she said, you're not going to believe this. It's a house for rent, and it's 2 bedrooms. And I said, she goes, you want to go see it? I said, of course. So walked into the little garden gates, and I turned to her and I said, I'll take it. And she said, well, you haven't seen the house yet. I said, I don't care. I don't care. I'll take this. It absolutely resonated with me. The garden, the whole atmosphere of it. It was Santa Barbara has a certain ambiance to it.
Yeah,
that's so
but I mean,
special.
it's so charming.
So
I mean,
yeah, this is as far as I got, and I said, I'll take it. and for all I knew, and I couldn't afford it at the time. That was the other thing. I was going through divorce. It was a nightmare time in my life, and I really couldn't afford it. But I was like, no, I'm going to figure this one out, which I tend to do in life. I can't afford it. I'll figure it out.
Right.
And so many years later, I'd been renting it, and then Tim and I got married in '96, and the gentleman who owned this was a designer in LA named Jim Northcutt, and I got a phone call that Jim had died, and I had put it in my lease that I had first right of refusal. So here Tim and I just get back from our honeymoon, and I said, we have to buy the house. And he goes, we're not buying the house. I said, yes, we're buying the house. And he goes, we just bought a house. I said, we're buying this house too. And of course, my poor husband, he'd been a bachelor until he was 42.
Little did he know what he was getting into.
Oh God, no, I mean, a 10-year-old, a dog, 2 cats, crazy wife.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, we've survived. But this is our little, I call it my mouse house.
It's so charming.
It's 1,200 square feet. It's tiny. And it is where I feel the most peaceful. It's just simple. It's, white canvas duck. It has a simple pool, view of the mountains. It's just, it's up in the trees. It's just, we were there for Thanksgiving. It was great. And and there's the outside. Wonderful oak trees. Home sweet home. And I think there's one more slide.
Did you have Thanksgiving outside?
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And then for the students in the room,
And
never
there you
say
are.
never. This is my first swing. I just installed this 3 weeks ago down at the house in Malibu, and I was like, this is my first swing. So, you're going to find in life, in your career, that you're going to do things you've never done before, and, be open to that. And just, embrace that. This is for a 38-year-old bachelor. He, a former Navy SEAL. He did 3 tours of duty. And
Oh, wow.
he said, I want this home to be fun. I want this home to be happy. No sharp objects. It was an interesting process working with him. And he's a bachelor, and I said, you need a swing. so swing, and upholstered it in that fabulous fabric, and
How great. And did he love it? Did he love it?
Oh yeah. He walked in, and he was so cute. He was like, oh my God, I've got this Architectural Digest home. And I said, better than that. Anyway. Yeah, so that was a fun one.
That is fantastic. Okay, we're going to come around with microphones for people that have questions, but while you all think of your questions, I'm going to take you back because I want to understand better. Now that you're 35 people, right? You've got a big firm. Can you get away from everyone wants you? Do you have enough key people that they can do, or do clients still want you?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I can. I'm a very good delegator. You have to be a good delegator.
Yeah.
yeah, you have to learn to give up the control to a certain point, but you still have to own it if it's wrong. That's not much fun. But yes, I can certainly delegate really well. I've got Amanda Algren in my office, has been with me for 25 years. And we've just taken her on as a partner in the firm.
Okay.
So this is a wonderful big step for us.
I noticed she had a very prominent position on the website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
And 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's really something. And my employees stay a long time, which is lovely. You know, I think people who do and show loyalty should be rewarded, certainly. And I think also nowadays, you know, you want to know your path of growth. And I mean, I never thought about my growth path in my career. I never thought about a career, actually. I just did what I loved.
Nor were you encouraged, and we didn't even talk about this.
No, I wasn't encouraged.
I mean, you weren't even encouraged to have a career. Just touch on that for a second, shall we? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I had a much older father. My father was born in 1897. And yeah, he was 58 when I was born and retired at 60. So I never knew my father to go to work like a, you know, normal sort of dad. And my mother and father were 30 years apart. So
Wow.
Mommy was 20, Daddy was 50, and they were married for 52 years.
Wow.
You do the math.
Yeah.
And he becomes every man's hero, you know. But consequently, I think having an older father in the house, you know, we were sent to college to get our MRS degree, my sister and me. And, you know, and you find a husband, you get married, and you have kids, and you join the junior league, and you join boards, and you give back, and that's was my mother's life, too.
Yeah. Sure.
And the word...
My mother's life, too. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, and the word career
Yeah.
never entered our household, ever, and certainly not around the dinner table or anything. But my mother always encouraged me in my art and painting and being creative. She always saw that. And although, I'll tell you a funny story, my father's 102nd birthday, which about 2 weeks before his birthday, he said to my mother, "What have you got planned for my birthday?" And my mother said, "Well, I've got some ideas." She hadn't done anything. And she, what would you like? And he said, "Well, I'd like a cocktail party here in the garden." She said, "All right, fine." So invited their friends over. It's August. I'm usually down there in August. And I overhear one of my father's friends say to him, "Well, your daughter, Suzanne, you know, she's made quite a career for herself. She's a very talented young lady." And my father, without skipping a beat, says, "Yes, she got it all from me." I mean, he was dead serious. He didn't give my mother 1 ounce of credit, you know, which is pretty funny. So, but my mother does have a lovely eye and very good taste. But yeah, I wasn't encouraged to have a career path.
You weren't encouraged to have a career path.
No, I simply did what I loved doing.
Yeah.
I wanted to work in terms of, I get bored easily. I said this, I needed interesting things. I needed to be stimulated. And that's how I really did what I did. And I think I'm that poster child. You know, do what you love and the rest will follow. And I say that to every school I speak to, you know, find your passion. Find what it is that really resonates. And, you know, whether it's design and decorating or whether it's project management or whether it's drafting and sketching, find that passion and pursue that, and you will be really good at it.
Okay. Okay. Questions? Anyone who wants a microphone? Over here? Okay.
Gotta be something done.
We'll come around. Yeah.
My hecklers aren't very loud.
They're saving it. They're saving it to the end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all the enlightenment. I have this one question. How do you measure the success of each project that you have done?
That's a lovely question.
Yeah.
I personally measure it by the happiness quotient of my clients. I don't care how much the project costs in terms of like how much they're going to spend. I don't care how big it is, how small it is. I care about the end result of their happiness living in that home. That to me is the biggest reward. So if the clients are happy, and believe me, you will find out if they're not. Yeah, that's good. Makes everyone happy. The office is happy. They're happy.
Suzanne, to that point, there's this perception out there that somehow clients are more difficult today, or more demanding, or more. I mean, is that really the case, or has it been forever thus, or what do you find? Is it more challenging today?
You asked David Netto that question the other day in the podcast, which I thought was really good. And what it reminded me of was when Albert Hadley, I think it was right before he closed his doors. David Kleinberg, you can probably attest to this, but he said something about how different the client was now, and how they no longer trusted, or maybe it was that they used to trust you. And that was true back in the day. That you'd hire your decorator, and you would trust your decorator, and your decorator would do a great job. And you would go on with your life, of what you were doing with your life, not surfing the internet and showing up with pictures of things you found that you think would be nice. I mean, surely they've got better things to do. First off. But I do think the client has changed, because the client is more educated, self-educated because of the internet, because there's so much that's so readily available, which does not mean it's good, first off. And I'm forever...
Their knowledge, or the product that they're seeing necessarily?
Both.
Both.
Yes.
Yeah.
A little bit of knowledge can be dangerous.
Right.
And we all in this industry, we all get it now. We all get the client saying, well, I saw this in whatever, and I was thinking, could we put this in there? And you've got to be the diplomat. You have to say, actually, that I know that fabric, and I'll say it's been discontinued, but I'll get one that's better. So,
yes. Oh, sadly, we can't get that for you. Oh, I am sorry.
Oh, a recent dialogue was so wrong. And it's just,
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to save them from themselves.
Yeah.
And save yourself. But, or I'll say, yes, that's a great idea, but let me show you something that might be even better. So, you don't want to just shoot them down. Because, again, there's that trust factor. I have to trust you. So... but yeah, in a way, it's made it maybe not harder. In a way, it's made it perhaps not as special, not as exclusive. Do we go into our doctor's office and say, I saw this surgery, and I'd like you to do this?
I've been reading up on Ozempic, and I really feel I need
right,
a prescription.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd like you to do this on me. I'm like, no, you're not going to do that with a doctor.
Yeah.
So why do people, I guess it's also the creative process. Some clients really want to be involved in that process, and that's wonderful to have them engaged to a point. But
exactly, engaged, but also not present often.
Well, yes, exactly. But you also want them to have their own life.
Yeah.
I'll never forget one of my clients down in Little Rock. I've done 3 houses for them now, and he called me up. This is like 20 years ago. He called me up, and he's like, Suzanne, my name is 3 syllables in the South. Suzanne. I'm looking at this proposal. What is a 1-inch ruched flange on a pillow, and why do I need it? And now this is a captain of his industry.
And you're thinking, why do you have the time to even be looking at this,
it's
buddy?
kind of what I said to him. I basically said, Walter, I said, well, let me tell you what it is. I said, but more to the point, I said, you have much more important things.
You're a busy man, aren't you, Walter?
Exactly. And you are very successful, and I think you should really stay doing what you're really good at, And let me stick with my 1-inch ruched flanges on your pillows, because, I haven't done one of those in a long time, actually.
Yeah, we need to bring those back.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or? Okay. And then up in the front row too. Sure. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So honestly, in follow-up to that, if you, when creating the fine line between client input and client aggressive involvement. What's the way that you like to gather information about what they're aiming for without encouraging too much input?
Good question. Well, sometimes you need to send them down a rabbit hole. So I have a closet questionnaire for him and a closet questionnaire for them, and I have a kitchen questionnaire. They love homework assignments. So you give them a little project to do, and they go running off, like, okay. And so I think, there's levels of engagement, right? And there's levels where you do not need to bother a client with it. It's just simply not important for them to worry about it, or to even make part of that decision. And I think that's part of learning how to read people. You can see them start to glaze over. Most clients have a 2-hour time span, and then they just start to fizzle out. They just don't do it. And you need to know, read that and then basically say, okay, you know what, let's hold these 3 things until our next meeting because I have some other ideas I want to pull together. You may not, but just, in other words, a lot of it is reassuring the client. A lot of it is putting forth your own confidence that you know what you're doing and that you've got them. You're going to catch them. It's fine. So a lot of it is that.
Okay, good stuff. The gentleman over here has the microphone, and then we're going to come to the...
So you brought up a somewhat salient point about materials and light. And because you have done work, Santa Barbara, the light is totally different than, say, an apartment in New York, and even, I imagine down south. So how are you modifying your overall direction based on what natural light you have an opportunity to work with?
Light is so different everywhere. The light here in New York, the light in London, in England, the light in Santa Barbara, because it faces south, it actually doesn't face west. You have to look at that everywhere you go. As an example, I'm doing a project, it's a ranch, and we bought several sort of antique fountains to put in and around the property. And they wanted us to pick the grout colors. And I said, well, I can give you grout colors, but I'm not going to approve them until I'm on site. And I'm going to want to see them both in the morning and in the afternoon. And sure enough, in the morning it was great, in the afternoon it was horrible. And so you have to adjust it for that light. And I think that's, again, the layperson is going to call you up after you've been in a magazine and say, oh, what color yellow is that? I want to paint that. Well, invariably I will mix my own colors. I love mixing colors. But I can tell them, okay, it's a Benjamin Moore whatever or Farrow and Ball. But I said, depending where you live, this will not look the same. And I said, so, paint a corner of your room. Try to get light on it both ways. Nowadays you can do, Benjamin Moore has those things where you can just get the little stick on the wall things, but they're only this big, If you really want to see, you need to do, 2 or 3 coats. And color is so hugely important. And I always want to work with, even whites, I want to work with a multi-pigmented color. So, people think white is just white. No, you want a multi-pigmented white because it will change during the day. And at times it'll look sort of cool, at times it'll have a warmth to it, and that's when you really, work with brilliant colorists who do that. They put more than just 2 pigments into a mix. So I love working with color. It's great.
Excellent.
Did I answer your question? Did I answer? Oh, no, wait.
Yes, Ms.
Well,
Campbell.
I was going to ask you a question. Have you ever worked with somebody and they've arrived and you have no idea? You just think you and they are so different that you can't imagine why they've come to you. And then, it evolves and probably turns into your, somebody you really respect and enjoy. And I just wonder if that's happened to you.
It has happened to me. And it's really, that's interesting because
What a fun question. I love that.
Yeah, I started, and I've also started on a project where I actually had to fire the client, who turned out she was a psychiatrist, and she called me like every day for a week because she needed closure. And I was like, oh God, I mean, I knew her for all of
Oh,
3.5
dear.
days. But yeah, she was a whack job. But yeah, exactly. Well, it was the red flag, and I called her up and I said I was too busy to take it on, and she couldn't handle that. But no, the client actually that I'm now doing a third house for, I started working with them 11, 12 years ago, and just a bit of an odd couple. And sort of how things were just, I don't know, handled, and they showed up. It's just, I thought, oh, I don't know about these people. They're not warm and fuzzy. And then he kept threatening to fire me until and I mean, now we're going into like the third year on this project, until finally I got so fed up with it. And I said to his wife, because she said, well, he's going to fire you. And I said, you know what? I think he should fire me. So I think you should go home. And I think you should tell him that he should fire me, because it'll be okay. Life will go on. I'll be fine. You'll be fine. He'll be better off. I don't know, but fire me. Never got mentioned again, and that was 10 years ago. Never got mentioned again. And she now is one of those kind of clients who can almost not make a decision without me. She sends me everything the architect draws, everything, So I've kind of created a monster. But on the other hand, I actually really enjoy working with her. She's an intelligent woman, but she's not a creative person. So she asks 1,000 questions, which was initially tedious, but then I realized where they were coming from. It wasn't that she was questioning me. It was that she was wanting to understand. And I really respect that. It's like, sure, let me teach you. Let me show you why. I love that. But yeah, again, you got to read these clients, and they're not all the same. So, and I will say to people starting off in the business, I will say, don't be afraid to say no to a client. Don't be afraid to say no. It's scary because you're starting off your own company, or you're starting out and you need a job. But I will say, don't be afraid to say no, because if your intuition is telling you there's something wrong with this, there probably is. And I have a litmus test that if you go to a client's house and you meet with them, if they don't simply offer you something to drink, like a glass of water, that speaks volumes about who they are.
Yeah.
They are not thoughtful, considerate, nice people. Run.
I put that water bottle there for you. That was me. I did that.
Oh, I didn't
Just
think you offered
FYI.
it.
I just, it's there. But it's such a great point, though. It's that when people show you who they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so often, especially when you're just starting out and you're saying yes to all these clients, but as we were talking about earlier, and these projects can go on for so long, and if that client doesn't even bring you a glass of water when they first meet you, just imagine how fun they're going to be for the next 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't want to spend time around them. Life's too short. And
too short.
you won't be doing your best work.
No.
It's, you won't be doing your best work.
No. And no one will be happy. On that cheerful note, I am going to ask you all to join me in thanking Suzanne so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.